You would expect ancient graves to show up in predictable places. Old battlefields, crumbling ruins, forgotten burial grounds. But what if I told you some of the most baffling ancient graves were found in locations that make no sense at all? We're talking mountaintops with no signs of civilization, icy wastelands, even beneath modern buildings. Graves that defy our understanding of who was where and when. These discoveries didn't just surprise archaeologists. They shook up everything we thought we knew about ancient migration, technology, and human behavior. At 22,000 feet above sea level, you'd expect to find snow, ice, and wind, not three perfectly preserved Incan mummies. But in 1999, archaeologists made a chilling discovery near the summit of Llullaillaco volcano in Argentina. The frozen bodies of three buried in ceremonial graves. What were they doing up there? These were not accidental deaths, they were a part of an Incan ritual known as capacocha, where people were offered to the gods. But here's what really stuns researchers: the level of preservation. Even their hair, skin, and blood remained intact due to the freezing temperatures. Finding an ancient grave on top of a volcano? That's not just rare, it's practically impossible. And yet, there they were. In 2020, divers exploring a submerged cave system in Tulum, Mexico, discovered human remains. Bones dating back more than 9,000 years, buried deep in flooded chambers where no human should have ever been. Here's the real kicker. When these individuals were buried, those caves weren't underwater. Sea levels were drastically lower during the Ice Age, but as the climate warmed and water flooded the region, it created a hidden graveyard only accessible by expert divers today. One skeleton, nicknamed Naya, is one of the oldest, most complete Paleo-American skeletons ever found, and she was buried in a place that's now practically unreachable. The Sahara is the last place you'd expect to find a thriving lakeside community, but that is exactly what archaeologists discovered at a site called Gobero. In 2000, they uncovered dozens of graves buried in what is now a blistering desert. Around 10,000 years ago, this area was lush, full of lakes and wildlife. The people buried here belonged to the Kiphian and Tenerian cultures, two very different groups separated by thousands of years. One particularly moving find was a woman buried alongside her family, all three holding hands in what may have been a family tragedy. The graves reveal that the Sahara wasn't always lifeless, but the fact that an entire cemetery now sits in what looks like the middle of nowhere is hard to wrap your head around. In 2013, construction crews digging beneath a parking lot in central London unearthed a mass grave. Over 50 skeletons stacked together. Some were even left without heads. Some showed signs of disease, and all were completely out of place. Turns out this grave may have belonged to victims of the Black Plague, or even prisoners from a forgotten Roman or medieval execution site. What's more baffling is that it was in the heart of modern London, completely undocumented, hidden under concrete and asphalt for centuries. Historians were shocked. They expected pipes, not plague pits. Novaya Zemlya is a remote, frozen archipelago in the Russian Arctic. It's mostly tundra and military testing zones, definitely not the kind of place you'd expect to find ancient burials. But in the 1990s, a team discovered wooden coffins and human remains buried beneath layers of permafrost. Carbon dating shows these graves belonged to Pomor settlers, Russian hunters from as early as the 13th century. But how did they survive in such brutal conditions? And why build permanent graves here, of all places? It's a testament to human resilience, but also a bit of a mystery. These weren't quick burials, they were intentional, crafted graves in a place barely anyone lives. In 2008, a team exploring the Kaijo Cave on Luzon Island in the Philippines found something incredible: a 67,000-year-old human foot bone. But as they dug further, more bones began to surface, belonging to an entirely unknown human species. Dubbed Homo luzonensis, these individuals were small, with curved toes and strange anatomy that set them apart from modern humans and even Neanderthals. What's bizarre isn't just that they were different, it's that they were buried in such a deep and remote cave system. How did they get there? Why did they choose such an inaccessible place for burial? And it's kind of like finding a grave in the basement of a mountain. At over 16,000 feet in the Himalayas lies Roopkund Lake, frozen for much of the year, but every now and then the ice melts just enough to reveal hundreds of human skeletons floating in the water and scattered around the shore. Initially thought to be from a single catastrophic event, DNA analysis revealed multiple genetic groups and time periods. Some date back to 800 AD, others are as recent as the 1800s. These weren't mass victims of a storm, they were separate groups buried in one of the world's most remote and hostile terrains, and no one really knows why they were there or why their final resting place was a frozen crater lake in the clouds. In 2003, a tiny skeleton just 6 inches long was found in Chile's Atacama Desert, wrapped in cloth and buried near an abandoned church. The skeleton had a cone-shaped skull and only 10 ribs, leading many to speculate that it was an alien. But of course, DNA analysis confirmed that it certainly was human, specifically a female with multiple bone mutations. Her skeleton is less than 100 years old, but her grave's location, her size, and her mutations made her burial one of the most unusual and controversial discoveries of the 21st century. Why bury her out in the middle of nowhere? Who was she? No one knows for sure, but her resting place feels like it was chosen to be hidden forever. The Anga people of Papua New Guinea once practiced a rare burial tradition. Instead of placing bodies underground, they entombed them in vertical cliffside caves, many reachable only by very perilous climbs. Some of these burials date back centuries, and the bodies are remarkably preserved, their skin mummified by the smoke and dry air. One burial site, perched high in the limestone cliffs, contains dozens of corpses watching over the valley below like stone guardians. The challenge here? No modern tools, no easy access. These graves weren't just out of place, they were practically impossible to reach, yet they still exist. In 1878, archaeologists uncovered a lavish Viking grave in Birka, Sweden. It was filled with swords, armor, and war horses, clearly the grave of a high-ranking warrior. For over a century, it was assumed to be a man, but in 2017, DNA analysis confirmed it was actually a woman. This changed everything. Female Viking warriors weren't mythical, they were real. But what shocked archaeologists even more was the location. This particular grave was placed in a prominent warrior's position, something thought to be reserved for elite men only. This grave shouldn't have existed, not because of its location on a map, but because it defied cultural assumptions about who the Vikings buried like royalty. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thanks so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Livia Kozlovsky, and I will see you again soon. Goodbye!